So on Sunday morning, the Dallas Cowboys were reported to be interested in Odell Beckham Jr., who remains a free agent after receiving surgery post the last year's Super Bowl. So tonight we will talk about, does it make sense for the Cowboys? Would OBJ want to play in Dallas? And what is the biggest hurdle to overcome to see OBJ play with a star on his helmet? We will talk about that and much more on tonight's episode of ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Ladies and gentlemen, the bye week has come to an end. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I don't know if you needed the mental reset. Maybe some of us did. Maybe some of us just straight up just missed watching the Dallas Cowboys play some football. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the Cowboys tonight. After we get done with the OBJ conversation, we will also talk about maybe a misunderstanding regarding next weekend's game versus the Green Bay Packers. And lastly, we will take a look at the best from Sunday. What was the best thing that you saw in the NFL on Sunday? That's what we will talk about tonight. So welcome everyone into the show. Do me a favor and hit the like button. Share the stream. Every like puts this show in front of more and more Cowboys fans. So that is the biggest thing that you can do to help out the show. Let me shout out some people here in the YouTube chat and the Facebook chat. We've got Sean on YouTube. We've got Gregory. We've got Quartzer here. We've got Mark Aaron as well on YouTube. Samuel, Bruce, Joey Bella. Shout out to the Facebook audience as well. Packers look great today, says Mark. Hey, we'll talk about that and much more. We'll talk about whatever is going on with the Packers. That I'm not going to lie. At one point, I was frustrated with the amount of injuries that were piling up for the Green Bay Packers. So let's talk about this and much more. Without any further ado, let's get into this show officially. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3. What is up, everybody? And welcome into ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out adzsports.com/Dallas. And as always, remember that Primetime is brought to you by our friends over at FreemanMazda.net. We've got a new ride of the week. We'll talk about it later. It is the 2023 Mazda CX-5 2.5 Turbo all-wheel drive. We'll talk about that one in a few moments here. But before we do any of that, let's get into OBJ. Let's talk about Odell Beckham because I'm sure that you heard by now. But on Sunday morning, Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo from NFL Network reported that the Cowboys were expected to be in the mix for OBJ once he fully recovers from an ACL injury. That was expected by many to happen mid-December. There were some interesting reports earlier today as well from Jay Glazer over at Fox, suggesting that OBJ might be really close to returning to the football field. So the NFL.com report indicated that, and this is an exact quote from Rappaport and Garofalo, the top free agent available is firmly on the Cowboys' radar, sources say, and they are expected to be in the mix when he is ready to pick his team upon full recovery from an ACL tear. Remember that OBJ has not signed with a team, probably because he's just waiting to be ready to go and to see who is the biggest suitor for OBJ. So my question from me to you right off the bat, are you buying or selling the Cowboys OBJ rumors? Are you buying into this storyline, especially after the Cowboys were reportedly interested in trading for Brandon Cooks, which didn't end up happening, of course. Bringing in Cooks, would have meant a hefty cap hit for 2023 and giving up potentially a second-round pick. This one is different because I've seen some people suggest on social media that OBJ is seeking a long-term deal, and I don't agree with that. I think that OBJ is actually seeking a short-term, one-year thing until the end of the season. But also, OBJ is going to demand a lot of offers. And that's a tough one when you get into the Dallas Cowboys, right? Because they usually are not a team that will go into an auction and spend a lot. That's not how they do things. So, are you buying or selling the Cowboys OBJ rumors? Let's see some of your answers here in the show. Rex goes with buying, Gregory with selling, Joyce is tasting, so maybe something in between there for Joey. 6 to Midnight says selling. He's a hurt guy, and we have enough of those. Dom goes with buying. Toxic Tom says hard sell. Come on, Mo. Not going to happen, says Junior. Too expensive for a hurt wide receiver. I'll buy it when I see it. So as you can see, so far, we're seeing a very mixed response. Very mixed response on the chat. Rex says buying on the rumor, selling on the idea. And that's interesting. Thank you to Rex for clarifying that, because my question was intended towards the report, the rumor, not necessarily the idea. We'll get into that in a few moments here on the show for sure. Now, Tommy says selling because I have no faith in Stephen Jones. I would like to bring him in, though. I understand the urge to sell this rumor. The Cowboys have just accustomed us to a way of doing things. However, and I gotta say this, I am kind of buying it with a big asterisk, and we'll get into that in a few moments here on the show, which would be the title of this video. The biggest hurdle to land OBJ will be tough to overcome for the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't think that they are really just doing this to pretend that they're interested and then not really get into the market for OBJ, because one, I don't think he will be that expensive. I think this will be more about OBJ choosing where he wants to go now that he has the ring, because people are saying, oh, OBJ wants a ring. And yes, he does, but it's also a little bit different when he already has that one, because he already won the Super Bowl with the LA Rams, even if he got hurt in the big game. So there's that. That being said, I do think that the Cowboys could end up being willing to invest in getting OBJ to Dallas for the remainder of the season, because I don't think that even the Cowboys imagined that the NFC would be this wide open. I don't think that they imagined that the Tampa Bay Bucks, the LA Rams, and the Green Bay Packers would look as bad at this point of the season as they do right now. Because yeah, Tom Brady was Tom Brady earlier today for about 35 seconds towards the end of the game against the Rams, but overall we saw two very bad football teams go at it in week 9 of the 2022 NFL season. So I think that there's something there that could really push the Cowboys to say, you know what, let's do it. Let's get OBJ in here. And the Cowboys, you cannot deny it, they do need a wide receiver. And they let go Amari Cooper earlier in the year. I know that some of us have not gotten over that part, because I've seen a lot of takes on Twitter and Facebook and all of it saying, well, if they let go of Amari Cooper, I don't think that they will go get OBJ. And while I see the merit in that, I think that the price will be very different. Even though I still don't like the decision to move on from Cooper and everything, and I know it's not March anymore, so I'm not going to go too deep there. But the point is, the number that the Cowboys were going to pay Amari Cooper would be very different to the number that you would pay OBJ, because that number might trend a little bit more towards 5 million instead of 20 million, right? So it's a different conversation here when we're talking about OBJ. So I would buy the rumors just a little bit, because I do think that the Cowboys will be interested, and I do think that they will not lowball OBJ when the offers start pouring in. And by the way, the report indicated that the Cowboys have not really talked to the agent yet. I don't think that many teams have exactly at this point of the process, but it does sound like they will once OBJ announces he's fully recovered and ready to go. That being said, there's one big hurdle that I think the Cowboys would need to overcome in order to bring OBJ in. And here's it. How do you convince Odell Beckham Jr. that you will win the NFC East? Because OBJ, as I said we'll be looking to land in a contender for this year's playoffs. And I think that when you look at the players across the NFL, I would make the Kansas City Chiefs, who are playing on the Sunday Night Football game right now, and the Buffalo Bills as the leading contenders to land OBJ. Because not only are they the favorites in their respective conference, but they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Josh Allen. And those are the top two quarterbacks in the league right now. So even though Josh Allen kind of sucked today versus the Jets, but he's still the guy, or one of the guys probably behind Patrick Mahomes, even though the Bills are killing it lately. But that being said, that's a selling point for the Bills and the Chiefs. And another selling point is they might get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They might get the number one seed. They both have 2 losses, but they're playing in different divisions. Whereas the Cowboys are number 2 in the NFC East, and they trail the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles at 8-0. And I don't think that we've heard anything about the Eagles being contenders, but that alone kind of might push OBJ's interest a little bit downward when it comes to playing with the Dallas Cowboys, because he would probably know that the Cowboys have a tough task of winning the division, even if they beat the Eagles in December 24th, because they have that outside factor that they cannot control, which is they need the Eagles to lose some ball games. Beating the Eagles on Christmas Eve won't necessarily change things in the division. So that's a tough sell, maybe, for OBJ. That's the way I see it. If we know what OBJ wants, which is obviously a payday, even if it's a 1-year deal, plus a team that can get to the Super Bowl, and for him to this time around be able to play 4 quarters of football in the Super Bowl, I think that's a tough sell for the Cowboys. So how do you convince him that you're going to win the NFC East and that you're actually going to be playing at home, and maybe you have a shot at the number 1 seed in the conference as well? Can you convince him that you can do that or not? That's a tough ask for the Cowboys. And that's one of the things that it makes me really think that they are not going to land OBJ. More than the money side of things, by the way. More than the money side of things. Let's see some of your comments here in the chat really quickly. Corey says they are biddable. And now I agree with that. I agree with that full-heartedly. I think that the Cowboys, I know that we're getting ahead of ourselves, and this is not an official prediction, but right now I would lean towards the Cowboys beating the Eagles when the time comes to face them. But once more, you do have that outside factor that you cannot control, and you need to convince OBJ that you can do it. And I don't know if the Cowboys can. That's a tough sell. Let's see. Eagles will lose to the Titans, Cowboys, and Giants at 6 to midnight. That has to be what Jerry tells OBJ if the time comes for them to have a conversation about it. The Eagles might lose to Green Bay, says Sound Might. Craig says Jerry's trying to keep the Cowboys in the news, especially on the bye week. And I really do not. I mean, I get it that Jerry Jones is a super good marketer and all of that, but I will buy that the interest is real in OBJ. I will buy it, especially after seeing what the state of the conference is right now. Jason says if they sign OBJ, it would cause them to scrap the current offensive philosophy of run first, says Jason White. It doesn't have to. I don't know if they would adjust the way that they do things, but I would say that it doesn't have to scrap that philosophy. And I think that the perfect example of it would be to point towards the Detroit Lions game. In the Detroit Lions game, you saw the Cowboys still have that little bit of that philosophy, even though they were aggressive in the first half. And you saw Dak Prescott take some shots down the field. But you saw the Cowboys run in early downs. And you saw them do so out of 11 personnel. I think that we saw a lot of 2 tight end sets and 3 tight end sets versus the Chicago Bears. I'm just not entirely convinced that that is the world the Cowboys want to live in. Because as soon as they got Dak Prescott back, they featured 11 personnel on their offense. But then a week later, they didn't have Noah Brown. And the Cowboys did not want to have Jalen Tolbert or Kevontae Turpin a lot of the time on the field. So I think that the Cowboys even if they have that philosophy of running the ball first, I think that we will still see a lot of 11 personnel over the course of what's left of the season. Albert says OBJ's skill set is what they really need because it will only help the other receivers as far as drawing their attention away from them, and he is just as dangerous himself. Excuse me. I think that Albert is up to something here, and we might dive right into that conversation here with the following question. I already asked you if you guys were buying or selling the OBJ rumors. Now, this is a different one. It might be similar, but it's a different one. Are you for or against bringing OBJ in? We covered the interest. Is it real or not? Different opinions in the chat. I think that it's real. I think that it's tough for them to convince OBJ to come to Dallas instead of choosing the Bills or the Chiefs or some other of these top teams. Honestly, I think it's those top two in the other conference. But now the following question is, are you for or against bringing OBJ in? Let me know in the chat. And while you do that, let me talk to you about our friends over at freemanmazda.net before I give you my answer. Because the ride of the week is the 2023 Mazda CX-5 2.5 turbo all-wheel drive. This one starts at $38,125. It's got all-wheel drive, auto climate control, Wi-Fi hotspot, and adaptive cruise control with a miles per gallon capacity of 22 when you are in the city, which goes up to 27 when you are in the highway. Make sure that you check out the Freeman Mazda Ride of the Week over at freemanmazda.net. That is freemanmazda.net. And remember that when you choose Freeman Mazda, you're choosing a lifelong partnership with your car dealer. That being said, are you for or against bringing in OBJ? Sorry, I had something in my eye, and that was killing me a little bit. Let's see. Are you for or against? Mixed answers. I like it. Mixed answers in the chat. Craig says 100% against. Gregory goes with 4. Dom says 4. Bruce 4. Soundmind 4. Against for Rex. OBJ would be a great add to Dallas, says Courtney. I will have a similar answer than Craig. He said 100% against. My answer would be 100% for OBJ. I would love OBJ in Dallas. Toxic Tom says, I don't see realistically or logistically how it would work. So we sign him in December and he gets into game shape and learns the playbook when, says Toxic Tom. That is a valid question. But also, I don't know if we are a little bit kind of brainwashed by the Cowboys at this point, because we've seen a lot of receivers join teams or players overall join teams late in the season for them to be contributors in the playoffs. And heck, if you got to tell him the route every time at the huddle that he needs to run, do it. Because OBJ is that good. That would be my take on this whole thing. OBJ contributed to the LA Rams despite joining them late in the season. He didn't join them that late, but he contributed a lot. And over 8 games in the regular season, he scored 5 touchdowns. Maybe didn't get a lot of yardage, but he really helped them in key spots. And then the Rams got into the playoffs, and he had a monster postseason. Maybe not a historic one, but he averaged 72 yards per game. He got a couple of touchdowns, and he consistently helped the Rams move the chains. Why? Because he can beat man coverage and because he can exploit the weak spots of zone coverages. That's what OBJ does, and he does it at a very high level. There has been a lot of, noise around OBJ throughout his career. Some of it very valid, some of it maybe a little bit exaggerated. We saw the Baker Mayfield drama, for example, when he was with the Cleveland Browns. And then we saw that maybe Baker didn't have all of the support that we thought that he had at one point. And maybe a lot of players sided with OBJ, actually, once he was gone to the LA Rams. We saw that the Rams players passionately recruited him because maybe he's not that toxic presence in the locker room that we have all been made to, believe. And I know the video from the dad happened of him showing every time that he was open and all of that. And I know there is some question marks in there, but I do think that OBJ helps your team significantly more than he hurts your team, 100%. And I think that if you get CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and OBJ in the playoffs, that could be one of the best wide receiver trios in the NFL for January. And that might sound like an exaggeration, but that's how highly I think of those three wide receivers. Toxic Tom says, I love the idea of a healthy OBJ in game shape. That isn't this OBJ right now. Now, I'm not sure about game shape. I will give you that. That is a big question mark. The health question mark, it's a solid timetable for an ACL recovery. It really is. It happened in February. It would fit what the ACL recovery is now. And I think that we had this conversation when Michael Gallup was about to come back. But we've seen in the NFL that when players come back from ACL injury, most of them are coming back at full strength. I don't think that Michael Gallup has been limited over the past few weeks. I think that more than anything, people are just confused as to whether the lack of production has to do with his health or just the way that the offense has gone over the past few weeks, especially the last couple of weeks since Dak Prescott has been back. But I'm seeing Michael Gallup generate separation. I'm seeing him making spectacular catches. I'm seeing him run at full speed. I don't know if he's limited. So I think that OBJ would be healthy and will be healthy when he comes back. Game shape, that is a very valid question, though. That is a very valid question. I don't know about that one. But also we saw that he killed it in the postseason last year. So that's an interesting one. Now you get that group of wide receivers going in the playoffs, and you can run the football and you can throw the football. OBJ would throw a fit, says Rex, the first time Dax keeps a ball or overthrows him. Yet with the Rams, this didn't happen. And with the Rams, you saw a very different version of events. I don't know if that was a coincidence, man. I don't know if it was. I remember reading that article by The Athletic of how the Rams players were in on the recruitment for OBJ, and you kind of got the impression that the players actually kind of love him. It's not necessarily as things were portrayed when he was in Cleveland. Dexter says, Turpin can free up Lamb and Gallup. We don't need him. I believe he will bring too much drama when the ball is not thrown his way, and we don't need that. Now, counterpoint. Does Turpin really free up Lamb and Gallup? Does Turpin really run a full route tree? Because at least we have not seen it happen yet. And I don't think that he can run a full route tree. I think that he is a player that, although he can bring that vertical element and that motion and the round kind of element that we saw versus the Bears in 2 consecutive plays, and it's so fun to watch, I don't know if you've got a complete receiver in Kevontae Turpin. I would bet that you don't. And the same goes for Jalen Tolbert, who the Cowboys are intentionally trying to keep off the field. And although Noah Brown has delivered, we're talking about a different class of wide receivers between Noah Brown and OBJ. I think that he would be a massive upgrade for the offense. I know about the locker room drama. I know about all of that conversation, but I will tell you what, he would help the team more than he would hurt it. Unfortunately, though, circling back to the beginning of the show, it might end up being a moot point because the Cowboys would have a tough time convincing him to come to Dallas over the Kansas City Chiefs, who have Patrick Mahomes and are leading the AFC West, and might be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and a similar conversation with the Buffalo Bills. And on top of that, the Buffalo Bills have got Von Miller, and Von Miller is trying to recruit him more than Nick Saban tries to recruit the number one guy in the class. Let's see. Iceberg says, damn, OBJ, seriously, now I understand why men destroy everything that they touch, says Iceberg Slim. Iceberg does not want OBJ. I know that OBJ is controversial, and I know that Cowboys Nation will feel very differently about this, and it will be a big-time conversation over the next few weeks. Toxic says, I'll give you this, Mo. If Dallas is going to do this, do it now. Get him in the building, and at the very least at practice. Time is of the essence. And it does seem to me that more or less wheels are starting to get in motion, because you've got that Jay Glazer report that OBJ is close. It's November already. I do think that OBJ will be choosing his team quite soon here. But anyway, speaking of the next few games, speaking of the future, let's move on from the OBJ conversation. Let's talk a little bit about a misunderstanding regarding next week's game. And while we do that, before we do that, actually, do me a favor, hit the like button, share the stream. Remember that every thumbs up puts this show in front of more Cowboys fans, and that helps us a lot, getting the numbers up for this show and giving you more content, and of course, growing the ADC Sports Dallas community. So do me a favor and hit the thumbs up for me. Let's talk about that Packers game. The look-ahead line in the betting world for this one was Cowboys -3 on the road, heading to Lambeau Field, ready to face the Green Bay Packers. After what happened today, it sits at 4.5. That might not seem like a lot of movement, but believe me, in the betting world, it is. 3 is a key number. 4 is also sort of a key number. So for the betting spread to move 1.5 points, it means a lot. And here's the reason why it did, probably more than the loss itself by the Packers. Injuries keep piling on for them. Rashawn Gary, who is shaping up to be one of the league's best edge rushers, went out of the game with a knee injury. Eric Stokes also out of the game with an injury. Wide receiver Christian Watson ruled out with a concussion. That is the rookie. Romeo Dobbs, the other rookie, also suffered an ankle injury. And finally, starting tackle David Bakhtiari, also on the injury list. This is without including many of the previous injuries that the Packers already entered the game with. Aaron Jones, by the way, at one point was also injured on this one. Alan Lazard had just come back from injury. The Packers are, number one, seriously hurt. And number two, even when healthy, we don't know if they are that good, because Aaron Rodgers wants the offense to be simpler. Matt LaFleur wants to keep the motion going, the movement going on offense, to keep the defense off of their, off balance. But right now, Green Bay, even though we have this one circled in the calendar as the measuring stick game for the Dallas Cowboys, it really is not. It really is a game that, even though they are the road team, the Dallas Cowboys at 6-2 should win. And maybe that's putting a lot more pressure on this game. I know that, but hey, looking at this objectively, you've got one of the most efficient teams in the NFL with one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, and apparently an offense that is slowly waking up and trending upward, versus a team that has not figured things out on offense or defense. A team that has dropped 4 straight games. The Cowboys should win this one. And I don't know if there's a question about it. Like, I'm not saying that they will 100% win this. Don't even play the game. I'm talking about what the expectations should be entering week 10. This is not the measuring stick that we thought it was going to be early in the year. That might come a week later when the Cowboys face the Minnesota Vikings, who are 7-1. And they have not looked very consistent while getting to 7-1. But they have looked significantly better than the Green Bay Packers, and they might win the division. Let's see some of your comments here. About this whole thing. We should run all over them, says Craig. Brian says, what is the weather report, though? I don't know if there's I would need to check that one. That's a good question from Brian, because weather at Lambeau is always a factor. I could see Rodgers not playing next week, says Craig. Aaron sure does miss his buddy. He hasn't been the same since Adams left. Very good comment from Dexter. And I can assure you, his buddy also misses Aaron Rodgers, right? Because none of them is having success right now. The Raiders dropped their third game with a 17-point lead at one point. I will tell you what. The Packers, I think at one point might figure it out. They would have to be healthy to do so at wide receiver specifically. But there's something about the Green Bay Packers that is not clicking schematically. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe we'll dive into the All 22 this week and figure it out. But there is something about the way the defenses are approaching the Packers that Green Bay is not being able to counter it. You know, with Davante Adams, they could line him up inside, outside. They could throw the ball deep to him, short, behind the line of scrimmage. They could do everything with Davante Adams. And he was the first read in 80% of the plays. And I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like when you sat down to watch a Packers game. We talked at length over the last month of the season or even into the postseason about how the Packers should be the blueprint to how you should target your number one wide receiver, because Matt LaFleur figured out countless ways to get him the ball. And as I said, in different scenarios, short passes, intermediate passes, and deep passes. It was crazy to see the numbers of Davante Adams in the slot, outside. Everywhere that you looked, he was near the top of the rankings in the NFL. But now they don't have that easy answer. And since they don't have that easy button that they can spam over and over again, something's not clicking for Green Bay. Something's not clicking. And some people say that they have a ton of number two wide receivers. I don't even know if they do. They might have one number two wide receiver in Allen Lazard. And of course, the obvious lack of a number one guy. I don't know if that's a good omen when you are facing the Cowboys defense. Big time matchup between the Cowboys linebackers and the Green Bay Packers running backs for sure. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are two headaches that you need to deal with on game day. And it will be a huge game for Leighton Van Der Esch, Damon Clark, Anthony Barr, Micah Parsons, all of those guys at the linebacker position, even though Micah with a little bit of an asterisk because, as I have said on this show a few times now, I think that he's more a defensive end now than a linebacker. Let's see. I didn't know that Danny Banditis punted for the Titans, says Mark Aaron. I start Pollard, seek off bench, says Russell. Let's see. Barry says the Packers wide receiver core looks like ours. There is no number one wide receiver, says Barry. And at least the Cowboys, even though I get that CeeDee Lamb still has some question marks to answer, the Cowboys do have a guy that is becoming a number one wide receiver because he's been able to generate separation against top tier cornerbacks. He's being able to put together some big time drives here and there. And he's among the NFL leaders in target rate in the entire league. So I think that the Cowboys do have a CeeDee Lamb that is becoming a number one wide receiver, even though there are some things to clean up, specifically the drops that I know still haunt some people in Cowboys Nation. But I think that honestly, I would describe CeeDee as a number one guy right now in the NFL. I would not compare it to the Packers situation in which they really do not have a number one guy. Wallace says, bro, CeeDee is a one. I agree. Russell says, very happy with CeeDee, getting better. Yeah, I agree. There are some things that need cleaning up for sure. But I think that this season, we have seen a number one guy in CeeDee Lamb. Even on the Giants game, and we talked about this actually on primetime, even with that big time, difficult to ignore drop in the first half, that was a killer game for CeeDee Lamb versus Adoree Jackson. So I would say that he's becoming a number one. Slowly but surely. Craig says, we're not going far without a middle linebacker, says Craig. And I will tell you what, we had a conversation about this on Thursday night, Craig. I don't know if you missed it, but I talked about how Leighton Van Der Esch was being blatantly disrespected by some in Cowboys Nation and around the NFL. And I will say that after that show, I wrote an article for adcsports.com on the topic. And while digging for stats here and there and some other takes, I stumbled upon Patrick Nosey Walker, Cowboys Twitter absolute legend, who seems to agree, and Honest NFL, which is one of the accounts that I respect the most, a former NFL scout. And he also kind of agrees with the LVE take. So I feel good about that one. I'm happy about that show. Corey says Damon Clark will be the guy, says Corey. And Jeremy says Clark is going to surprise people. Jeremy, the only reason why I think you are wrong, sir, is that I think he already did. That was an impressive game last weekend. I agree there. Go for 100 points, says Toxic Tom. There you go. That's what I think is a big misunderstanding for the Packers game. I think that it is not a measuring stick game. It is 100% a you should win it kind of game. It is the NFL, though. Nothing is guaranteed. That's just what we kind of see right now heading into that game. Before we get out of here, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what was the best thing in the NFL this weekend. Let me know what's yours. What was the best thing in the NFL this weekend? Because the Cowboys had a bye week and we had time to sit back and watch some NFL football that didn't have to do with the Dallas Cowboys. I love this answer from Toxic Tom. You're cheating, but I love it. And I was thinking about it as well. Toxic Tom says Alabama LSU. That was an insane football game. And I had Bama minus 13.5. I thought that they would really just take care of LSU, but I was wrong to doubt Jalen Daniels, excuse me. That's a big time athlete there, quarterbacking the Tigers. And you got to love Brian Kelly going for two, not even hesitating about it. And I don't know if you college football fans noticed what LSU ran to win the ball game on that 2-point conversion, but they ran the Hunter Renfrow play from the national championship that the Clemson Tigers won when Deshaun Watson threw that touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow. It's not the exact play, but it's the, flat route near the goal line with a rub route coming inside. So that was so awesome. LSU game was incredible. It's 6 to midnight. I thought that Tennessee, Georgia was going to be the game of the week. We were clearly so wrong about it. Bama LSU was one of the... Rich says, hey, Mo, you're trying to throw hands. No, I'm just exciting, acting out the play, thinking I'm a D1, FBS quarterback. Let me dream a little bit, Rich. Shout out to Rich. All right. Georgia is the real deal, says Reggie. And I thought they were not going to be the real deal. I thought that maybe they would disappoint a little bit in 2023. But hey, c'est la vie. Speaking of disappointments, my Clemson Tigers, man, DJ is not it, but the backup quarterback might not be either. It was not the same process as when Trevor Lawrence benched Kelly Bryant a few years back, and suddenly we had one of the best college quarterbacks out there. Mark Aaron says, wait, I think that SMU scored again. How about the quarterback tossing 7 touchdowns in the first half alone? 63 points Houston scored, and that wasn't enough to win the game. That was crazy. Anyways, let me see some of your answers here. Everyone's cheating. Everyone's taking some college football answers, but the question was, what was the best thing in the NFL this week? Craig goes with the Jets. Russell also with the Jets. Gregory says Notre Dame upset. No, that was not the best thing. I'm sorry, Gregory. Moving on. Corey, this was my answer. Corey says 5 touchdowns from Joe Mixon. 4 of them rushing, 1 of them receiving. That was an insane game from the Cincinnati Bengals running back. He was 1 touchdown away from tying the NFL record for touchdowns in a single game, which is 6. Only 3 players in NFL history have scored 6 touchdowns in a single game, and that's excluding quarterbacks. The passing touchdowns record is 7, but only Alvin Kamara, Gale Sayers, the legend, and I'm forgetting the other one, Dub Jones. All of them had 6 touchdowns in one game. I didn't bet Clemson, Craig. I just rooted for Clemson. They're my football team, because when I started watching college football was in 2011, and that was when Tatch Boyd was playing with Sammy Watkins and Andrew Hopkins, and I just loved watching them play. I bet them every week that time. Don't tell me how I placed my bets as an 12-year-old. That is not the topic here. But they became my team in that time. So I didn't bet them, though. I didn't want to bet that again because I know it was going to be a tough one. Actually, the Seahawks is correct. That's nice. Lions embarrassing Rodgers is Bruce. Let's see. Will Levis looked good on Saturday. So 6 to midnight. Some love for Kentucky in there. I like it. Holly says, yeah, they definitely don't want Philly winning anything. I wanted them to win the World Series. But hey, that's life. Ohio State winning the national championship. Oh, there you go. They will win the national again, says Reggie. Talking about Georgia. What chance does Georgia have in winning the national championship? Asks Sean. Well, this is not a college football show, but I will tell you. They have to be the favorite, right? They have to. I know that Bennett is not the best quarterback out there, but man, that has to be the best roster once more. I don't know. High chances, I would say. And they might not even have to face Bama again in the SEC championship game, which is crazy. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight. This was a fun ADC Sports Dallas primetime show. I will tell you what, I loved it. Tony Pollard is doing some Jim Brown shit, says Iceberg Slim. 6.3 yards per run. There you go. That's our OBJ, you idiots. Oh, whoa, Iceberg. Whoa, shield. So you're telling me because we have a good running back, we don't have to pursue a good wide receiver? That doesn't add up for me. That does not add up for me at all. Mo, do you think Judge will leave the Yankees, says Gregory? I will tell you that I am very scared. I am very scared that he might not be a Yankee anymore. It is a similar feeling to when the Cowboys didn't pay Dak Prescott and we were just waiting it out. It is a similar feeling, but it's a more intense one because this one is right around the corner. And ultimately, I think that they open up the wallet. I think that they pay Aaron Judge. Please don't take him to the Red Sox or the Mets or anywhere. Just come on. Not toxic. He would not look good in a Red Sox uniform. I'm sorry. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the show. This was a very fun episode of ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Fun fact, it is the first one that I ever do at 8 p.m. local time because my city changed time zones. I was in the Mountain Zone time zone before. Now I'm Central Time. So now I will do this show at my 8 p.m., which is a new thing for me. Kind of like the vibes of doing it a little bit later in the day. I like it. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up. Share the show, and I will see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central. How about my man Justin Fields is correct? Great game from Justin. All right, this time for real. See you. Bye-bye. Primetime brought to you by FreemanMazda.net. Check out the Ride of the Week and much more over at their website. Nos vemos mañana. Adiós.